This is TWiT.
And boy, TikTok just keeps on ticking, doesn't it?
Tickety-tockety.
I mean,
Let's
this whole TikTok story just ticks and it talks and it keeps going back and forth and back and forth. And just when we think the story's done, it's not really.
Because the clock
That's where we are right
rolling?
now anyways.
Sure.
President Trump has the company in his administration's sights, and we could hear any day now, apparently, how he feels about the latest news, which when we talked about this earlier, the last time, we didn't know this, but Oracle and possibly others plan to have a stake in the company. And joining us to navigate these muddy waters is Alex Kantrowitz from the Big Technology podcast and newsletter. Welcome back to the show, Alex.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's great to get you on. So as I just mentioned, last time that we discussed the TikTok saga on this show, Mikah and I anyways, we didn't know which U.S. company was going to be involved. Now we know that it's Oracle. It could be others as well. Talk us through how that came to be, especially because for quite a while there, it seemed like Microsoft was firmly at least in the rumors anyways. So how did this change and why Oracle?
So before I start, I'll say that every time I talk about TikTok, I make sure to caveat at the start that this is the most confusing acquisition of all time. I don't think I've been involved in anything that comes close to anywhere near as confusing as this. And that's because, it's not just your typical company acquisition, but there's also the U.S. involved and China involved, and also a presidential election going on at this moment. And it's not just like a full app, it's part of an app. So I feel like we should definitely be careful, or I'll be careful about saying anything with complete certainty, but I'll give you my best guess. So Microsoft seemed like it was the company in the lead here, right up until China said, actually, we're going to put a step in the acquisition process that's going to make us review whether or not that algorithm is going to go along with the deal. And at a certain point, it was basically like, the algorithm is not going to go before the sale deadline. And, for a moment, it seemed like the Trump administration might have pulled a fast one here, right? Saying, let's set a 45 deadline and make sure that the app is sold and maybe get ByteDance to sell before the Chinese government really caught on to what was going on. But I don't think there was ever a real good chance that was going to happen. And so once the Chinese government put that restriction in, it all of a sudden went from a sale of a complete app to what really looks like a hosting agreement. And I think Microsoft was really intent on owning the whole thing. And so then all of a sudden, ByteDance rejects Microsoft's offer, and standing in the ring remains Oracle, which they probably have like a good idea isn't going to try to exert as much control, probably just wants a cloud hosting deal as opposed to running the app in the way that they want to. Like Microsoft said they were going to make a number of changes. Oracle has said almost nothing about it. And so that's why standing there. And it's funny, you have Walmart seems to be coming along for the ride as well. Most recent reports are that Walmart wants to, team up in some way, and potentially the Walmart CEO gets a seat on the board. So you had Walmart going from a group of SoftBank and Google to the Microsoft group, and now to the Oracle group. So they're the ultimate fair weather fan in this entire equation. But that's sort of how you get to Oracle on this one.
Okay, so Oracle would, I guess, to some degree make sense, let's say, to ByteDance if they're agreeing to make some sort of agreement like this. How would this benefit Oracle as a company? It kind of seemed out of left field to me anyways. Microsoft made, I suppose, more sense. But like you said, this is a really confusing situation that we have here. So it really just seems like a bunch of names were thrown in the sky and one was grabbed out, and that name happened to be Oracle. So what does Oracle really get out of this exactly? Is it access to data? What do you think?
I mean, Oracle gets a cloud hosting contract, that's for sure. They've been trying to make their way into that world. And when we talk about cloud hosting, we talk about Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. We never talk about Oracle. Oracle's sort of this dinosaur on-prem type of solution. And so maybe that helps them say, hey, we can actually do cloud. Look at what we're doing for TikTok. That's the positive. The negative is that it comes along with a lot of pressure because, ultimately, if they are part of a, ownership group or a partnership that ends up messing TikTok up, that will haunt them down the line because I think that today's TikTok users are going to be tomorrow's enterprise software buyers. And, we're going to get to a point real quick where like the people that are dancing and consuming TikTok are going to be making decisions on what ERP solution they want to implement in their company. And if they look at Oracle as the company that messed up their favorite app when they were kids, it's going to take a long time, perhaps a lifetime, to build those bridges. And I don't think Oracle is fully aware of that risk right now because they don't understand consumer social. But if I was the person running the acquisition on Oracle's side, that's what would keep me up.
Okay, so we know that Oracle's in the running or is kind of at the head of this. We know Walmart is a possibility. We also kind of know that what the Trump administration and President Trump specifically had requested in all of this. He's kind of, laid down a line and said, this needs to happen. Here's the deadline. If it doesn't happen, I'm sorry, TikTok, you're out. But then we have this, which is not an outright buy, which, to some degree seemed to be kind of what President Trump was aiming for. It's a different kind of deal. So how does this, how does this satisfy that requirement? And what do you think we're going to run up against as a result of maybe this not being an outright buy like possibly President Trump wanted?
Well, I think from the beginning, this has really been a reality show for the president, where we're coming up on an election where the economy is really up and down, and that's being generous. Stock market's good, but Main Street is suffering. We have people dying from the coronavirus and just widespread unrest inside the country. And do you want to, you want that in the headlines all day long, or do you want like a story where you're forcing China to sell the most popular global app it's ever created? I'd pick the second if I were him. So to me, I think that this is, that might be the main thrust of it. I do think that there's real reason to go after TikTok. I mean, one of the most compelling arguments I've heard about it is that, TikTok it has an algorithm in the background that shows you content on that For You page that's not based off of a follow model. And it's, possible that if there was no, monitoring by the U.S. at all of that algorithm, that people on the back end in China could end up, shifting cultural attitudes in the U.S. without anyone knowing. And so you want some sort of U.S. ownership or oversight in order to be able to prevent that. And then, of course, from a national security perspective, you want to make sure that the data that everybody has is safe and protected. So that's why you'd want to explore it. Now, this acquisition or this deal, we won't call it an acquisition because it's not, but this deal or arrangement that they might come to with Oracle would take care of one of those problems, right? The national security issue, where Oracle would process all of the data that comes through TikTok. And that would sort of alleviate some of the concerns of the Chinese government, in collaboration with ByteDance, using that data for purposes we wouldn't want here, especially if you're the president. Your job is to keep national security apparatus safe. So, that helps it. Of course, Oracle's been fairly pro-surveillance. So there's another side to that coin. But if you're the government, you're not really thinking about that too much, I don't think. And, the deal doesn't necessarily address the algorithm issue, which I would argue is the bigger issue. But it's something. I mean, if you want to say something good about it, it's definitely something. But if you think about it in total, I mean, it's hard not to see it for what it really is, which is, reality show in the middle of a reality show.
Yeah, and it definitely does feel like this. And every like I said at the top of this story, every week we keep coming back for more because it's just kind of bewildering to see how this has all happened. Now, I saw before Showtime that President Trump is expected sometime in the next, it could be today, it could be tomorrow, to comment on this. Sources are saying they're not happy with the arrangement, which kind of points to either changes needing to be made with the deal, or I don't know what, or TikTok just, sorry, the U.S., is not a market that you can participate in. Could they even afford to lose the U.S. market if it really came down to that? Is TikTok strong enough to weather that storm? And do you think it'll even get there? That seems like such a such a powerful move. But do you think it might happen?
I don't think we're going to get to a ban. I mean, because I think TikTok will probably be fine if it doesn't have the U.S. market. I mean, obviously, the U.S. market's been good for it, but will it survive for sure? And also, all the kids will just use VPNs and find a way to use it anyway, because while U.S. software is banned in China, so are VPNs. Here, you can use a VPN, get around a ban. So, the kids are smart. They know how to do it. They'll be able to find TikTok one way or the other. But ultimately, I think this is going to be something, I mean, again, with the caveat that you shouldn't get too far ahead of yourself, because probably by the time this airs, I'll be wrong. That's how fast the story has been moving. But I do think that this deal is going to get approved. It has everything you would want if you were the president, right? It would have the excitement. It would have the illusion, or not even the illusion. It would have definitely be a story about you being tough on China, taking some, national security measures. You don't get TikTok banned. There's not going to be a whole, secondary news cycle that you have to deal with. It's almost sign, seal, deliver with a bow, handed to one of your allies in Oracle that takes care of the data problem. So I think it's, ultimately approved by the Trump administration. Yeah, some people are going to be upset about it. You've heard some Republican senators make a deal about it. And I don't think this is the final iteration of what happens with TikTok. I think this is going to be an ongoing saga. But if you're President Donald J. Trump and you're looking at this deal, I don't think there's any way you don't sign it right now.
Yeah, interesting. And we aren't going to have to wait much longer to find that out. I'm sure the next day or two, or maybe even right now while we're in the middle of the podcast. That's just the way the story is moving.